is. I want to take a look at Valentine's Day from a very historical lens. We can't look at it from today's lens, because in today's lens it has become watered down. When we look at the Christian tradition, there's an interesting story. There are a couple of stories that come, but basically the one that's more popular is that in the 3rd century, so long time ago, in the 3rd century, we're in the 21st century right now, so it tells you how long ago this was, right? It is reported that there was a priest, a Christian priest, whose name was Valentine, right? And he lived in Rome, and at that time the emperor was Claudius II, who in his emperor wisdom decided that soldiers who are not married will make better soldiers. Saint Valentine, I guess you can say, the priest, found that to be counterproductive. And so what he did was that he would continuously hold secret marriages, underground marriages basically, so people can come and get married with those that they were in love with. And even though it was outlawed, he continued this practice until Emperor Claudius found out about this particular practice, and he had him arrested and he had him killed. And so he became a folklore for the one who reminds people of the importance of love, and that's where that name of this particular holiday was. At the same time as he was doing these secret marriages and then he was killed for it by Emperor Claudius, there was a Roman tradition, a Roman pagan tradition that used to happen on February 15th. Right? And this Roman tradition was known as Lupercalia. Lupercalia, you can Google it if you think I'm making this stuff up, right? Lupercalia, C-A-L-I-A. Lupercalia was a Roman tradition, basically, which was celebrated, and it was to keep it very simple, it was a festival of fertility, right? And in particular fertility of crops. So they were keen on making their crops fertile, but at the same time that festival would then be applied towards human beings as well, in hopes that they would become fertile and then produce offspring. And so they had this holiday called Lupercalia, which was dedicated to Faunus, the Roman god of agriculture, as well as the Roman founders Romulus and Remus. Okay? So they would do this festival in honoring of these ancient gods or ancient people who established Rome. So on February 15th, what would happen is that they would begin the festival. Members of the Luperci, which are basically the Roman priests, would gather in a sacred cave where they say the infants Romulus and Remus were raised by wolves. So basically the emperors of Rome were left as children, and the story is that they were raised by wolves and then they established this empire of Rome, but they were raised by these wolves in a cave. And so the priests would go into this cave and they would start their festival of Lupercalia from this cave. And what would they do? The priests would sacrifice a goat for fertility reasons and a dog for purification. And then they would strip the goat's hide. Basically, they would skin the goat. Then they would dip the skin in sacrificial blood. And then they would go into the streets of Rome with that skin and gently tap crops so that they would become fertile, and they would gently tap women so that they would become fertile, right? Now, as this was becoming a norm, we are told that this was something that the people looked forward to. The practice continued until the 5th century, okay? So remember, Valentine happened in which century? 3rd century. This practice of Lupercalia would continue until the 5th century, when Pope Gelasius outlawed this practice and said this is unchristian. We can't go around tapping people like this, right? And so many believe then that the church had decided to place St. Valentine's feast day in the middle of February to make the people forget about the Lupercalia holiday, and still in a line of love, in a line of creating future offsprings, basically, transform that holiday into another holiday without upsetting the people who are practicing this one particular holiday. Saint Valentine, who was the martyr of love, was placed on this holiday of Lupercalia so that that pagan tradition would be left behind and people would start remembering the sacrifice of Saint Valentine's. And this is where we get Valentine's Day. And because of how it has been watered down, we find that Muslims heavily are involved in the giving of Valentine's Day cards, in the participation of Valentine's Day, whether it's to our spouses or whatever it is. And again, it's because of how it has been watered down. And we see a rise of this when it comes to Christmas as well, right? That when it comes to Christmas, we find that because of how Christmas has become so materialized and so, I'm thinking of a particular word, it's not coming to me. What's the word I'm looking for? Commercialized. Yeah, Ahsan. It's become so commercialized that we think it's okay to participate in it. So you'll have now Muslims who are gradually pushing the envelope when it comes to Christmas, right? So first we do something very simple like, let me take a photo with Santa. What's the big deal? My kid's taking a photo with Santa, right? Like literally, like how bad can that be, right? And then after that, why not just bring a tree home? I mean, it's a tree, really. If you investigate, a tree has nothing to do with Christmas, right? Has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus. So why not just bring a tree home? Why not just exchange gifts then? Why not just put up lights then? Now we're telling Merry Christmas to our family members, yeah? This is happening, don't we? We know it's happening. We know families who do these things, right? And I think it's when we start participating in commercialized events that have a religious holiday or a religious connotation or a background, this is how our own identity gets stripped away from us, right? It's important we don't become sheep, you know? Just because other people are sheep doesn't mean I have to be a sheep as well and I follow what everybody is. But what does Islam teach us? Islam teaches us, right, that we don't need a particular day that has been marked on the calendar for me to express my love to my spouse. For us, for a lack of better terminology, every day as Muslims should be Valentine's Day. Yeah? Y'all with me? Yeah? Now I'm going to get you in trouble right now. Okay? But that's the reality, right? We don't need a day in the calendar to say, oh, I got to remember my wife today. Let me buy some chocolate. Yeah, I got to remember my husband today. Let me buy a card. Why can't we do nice things for each other all the time, right? Why can't we express our love to each other all the time? And this is what Islam teaches us, right?